Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is Camille Mackler. I'm the Executive Director of the Immigrant Advocates Response Collaborative, Immigrant ARC, a collaborative of over 80 organizations and professional associations that came together after the response to the Muslim ban in January 2017 to support and defend New York's immigrant communities. And we're so thrilled to have you here tonight because for us, this is a real celebration. 4 years ago, we were just as frantic, just as busy, worrying just as hard, but without hope, with a lot of sadness and despair. And to be here today, to know that the Muslim ban that launched us is finally over, that we are turning a page and starting a new chapter in our adventure, and to be able to be here and share it with all of you is so fantastic. And I'm so excited. I've never left a panel prep as excited as I did after the prep session for this panel. It was just a fantastic hour spent with these incredible advocates recounting their stories, and I'm so excited for all of you to hear them. Before we do that, however, I wanted to share with all of you Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, who was with us at the airport on that first day, who negotiated the release of the first two passengers that were arrested and detained because of the Muslim ban. And she recorded a message for us, and I wanted to play it. And I see that there are some hands raised. If there are any issues, could you please just go ahead and put them in the Q&A? We'll be saving most questions for the end, but if you have an issue, if you need to talk to us about something, go ahead and put it in the Q&A, and we will we'll address it there. But while we do that, here you go, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. Let me try that again.
Good evening. I am Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez from New York's 7th Congressional District. I want to thank Immigrants Advocate Response Collective for organizing today's event. 4 years ago this week, I arrived at JFK Airport, where I saw two Americas. Inside the airport, passengers were being detained by a president who wanted to pit us against one another, who painted a picture of an America that was closed to all who didn't look like, speak like, and act like him. But outside, I saw a competing version of America, one that we aspire to and love, an America where our diversity is our strength, where the contributions of immigrants and refugees are not only welcome, but celebrated. I saw thousands outside chanting, their homemade signs carrying messages of empathy and support for those in the process of coming to America for a shot at a better life. And at the ballot box, that is the country the majority of Americans choose, one that will restore our role as a leader in welcoming immigrants and refugees, and will open, not close, the doors to opportunity. President Biden's repeal of the hateful Muslim ban is a first step, the impacts of which will be shared around the world as millions see a renewed promise in America. But we cannot stop there, and I am committed to working closely with this administration so that we can repair our broken immigration system, offer a refuge for those fleeing violence and persecution, and show the world that America is truly the land of opportunity. Thank you for having me. God bless.
And we thank Congresswoman Velázquez, who couldn't be here tonight, but who wanted to send us that message nonetheless. I am now going to hand this over to our moderator, Maria Odom. Before I introduce her, I just want to say how much this means to me personally to be here tonight, that day, just that decision to drive out to the airport, altered my trajectory of my life in so many ways, including it was the impetus that launched this organization that I now have the incredible privilege and honor to lead, that just became its own nonprofit earlier this year. But more than that, every single person that you're going to hear about today, I met and I got to know and I've gotten to work with and fight along with along the way because of that night. It was an incredible night. These individuals are literally some of the most fantastic people I've ever met. Their bios are all on the website, on our website, on our page. You can go under past events and you can read them all there. We wanted to get into the discussion right away, but I just want to remember the moment I met Maria, who I'd known for many years from her roles in the nonprofit world, in the immigration law world, and with the Obama administration. And she had just left that role, and she texted we were connected through a friend, and she texted and she said, "Can I help?" And I said, "Sure," because at that point it was drinking from the garden hose isn't the right analogy at that point anymore. But after about an hour of making her wait, we sat on a bench in Terminal 4, and she just screwed my head on straight and helped provide the groundwork for what made that effort so successful at JFK, and then what made Immigrant Arc so successful. And we're so lucky to have her in this field. So many of us call her a mentor, and we're just so fortunate for that. And I am so privileged to call her a friend. And I'm so happy that Maria, who is now the Vice President of Legal Services for Kids in Need of Defense and has been doing superhuman work defending children who've been attacked by this administration for the last 4 years, that you agreed to be here and moderate this discussion for us, Maria. So thank you so much, and take it away. And we're also sharing in the chat a Google Doc. We're going to be sharing our screen in a moment. So if you could go ahead and click on that link and start sharing your stories of where you were on the day of the Muslim bans and the days that followed, and let us all, share in that. This is a moment to share and celebrate and experience joy for the first time in 4 years. Maria?
Camille, thank you. That was way too generous and way too kind. And I am so pleased and so proud to be here tonight. I think the announcement of the Muslim ban was one of those moments, one of those I remember where I was and what I was doing moment. And personally, I had just moved to New York City and left the Obama administration. And frankly, I was intimidated and in awe at the advocacy community here in New York City. And needless to say, proud to be in this company at such a momentous time. I think that my panelists, our fellow panelists here, who were on the front line, will be best suited to talk about the effort on the ground, and I will reflect on the small part that I played in the back of this tremendous effort. So why don't I start by turning to our colleagues, and I'll ask you, can you share with us your memories of that day when the Muslim ban was announced, and and what followed immediately after that? Maybe I'll start with you, Carmen.
Hi, everyone. I have to admit, I recently reacted to another immigration attorney's comments on a social media handle about how she was just so tired right after, kind of like right as we were going into the inauguration, and how it really felt like, especially this last year, it felt like we were crawling to the finish line. And I have to admit that I was already there at the time, that weekend of the Muslim ban. Many of us had been doing a lot of work on the border and had spent a lot of time in detention facilities, and were trying to provide support to push back against some of the Obama administration's immigration policies, which to us felt at the time really extremely egregious, and I do think objectively would be judged such. But so we were doing our best to do that work, and I know personally I got a call from Camille that morning saying that we had all connected the Friday night, and we're like, we had the sense that the ban was not going to go into immediate effect. And then I remember getting a call on Saturday morning and to ask, hey, do you want to come out to the airport? And my response was, no, I'm on my way to the office. I've got 20 credible fear interviews to do today, remotely with women, with mothers and children in Dili. And it felt, I just remember this kind of surreal feeling of kind of our immigration values dropping so quickly. And we had already, I would say, I would argue, lost them at the southern border, and then to suddenly have them also lost with communities that we thought had been safe was really surreal, I think is the best way to describe it.
Thanks for kicking us off, Carmen. And I think the feeling was mutual, just in even transitioning from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. I feel I had to first allow myself to grieve for the past 4 years and process the loss and process the incredible damage before feeling the joy that I know others who are not in our space were feeling probably more immediately than we did. And I appreciate hearing about where you were at that time, considering family detention and some of the other aspects of the immigration policy of the Obama years that had a very detrimental impact on our community. How about Hassan? I'm going to turn to you to share with us a little bit, to going back 4 years to this moment.
So yeah, it's hard to remember so much happened in such a short period of time, but it had just been 2 days since Trump had issued his executive orders changing enforcement policies and basically saying that everyone is now going to be a target for ICE enforcement. And I think we were still reeling from that and trying to figure out what is this going to mean for our clients. And then when this hit, as many of us, we were scrambling to try to figure out how to meet the need. I wasn't actually at the airport. I was in the legal aid office that weekend trying to put together, spreadsheets of shifts, who's going to cover which terminal at what time, trying to get Wi-Fi hotspots, trying to get laptops together. And also in trying to line up attorneys who were admitted in the Eastern District so that they could be on standby to file habeases as they were being prepared on the ground in the airport. And also answering questions from my family in Tucson, Arizona, who were like freaking out. And my family was very involved in the Muslim community there. Like my father had helped to found the mosque in 1970. And as people were calling my mom asking, what is going on? She's like, oh, my son's an immigration attorney. I'll just give you his number. And so answering questions of people in Tucson, trying to figure out what on earth was happening. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy time.
I imagine. Thank you. Thank you for reflecting on that day. And I look forward to hearing more on your thoughts on enforcement and where we've been and where we're going. Let's see, Jennifer, would you like to share with us about that day?
Sure. So right before, I guess that was a Saturday, maybe it was Thursday, IRAP, which is a wonderful organization, had sent an email around that went to a lot of people saying, there might be this executive order, we might need volunteers. So I actually sent it around at the firm, and I have I'm at Cleary Gottlieb, I run the pro bono practice. I have never had this experience before. It was like my computer blew up. Hundreds and hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, and hundreds of emails started coming back saying, I'm in, this is horrible, what can we do? And, basically we were on the ground. Initially, I stayed back to do the actual filings in the Eastern District, which we can talk about a little bit more later, but then went to JFK Airport. And just remembering, it was very late at night Saturday after we had filed the petitions for our clients. It was so surreal I took a cab, drive past the people that were sort of supporting the people inside. It was really like an American moment to kind of look out of the taxi window and seeing. It was before the Women's March and before we got used to marching again. It was like in the infancy. And it was so spontaneous. It really felt like it just grew. And then I walked into Terminal 4 and saw all my friends from the immigration community, from the nonprofit world, just there. I mean, people didn't look great. It was the middle of the night, I'm not gonna lie, but everybody was there. kind of sleeves rolled up, ready to get to work and do whatever needed to be done. It was a real moment in time.
It was quite a sight. I remember walking into Terminal 4 and seeing folks on the floor with laptops, cords everywhere, just a mass of attorneys doing what they know to do best. And it was heartening and inspiring. It continues to be. We're going to talk a little bit about, legal services, and particularly in New York State, and what that moment also did for that. But I want to turn to Marianne and get her reactions before we go a little deeper.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that I'm here to celebrate where we're at today from where we were 4 years ago. In reflecting on this time, I kept going back to that first phone call that I had with Camille. There was this mutual anger that we had. We were so angry, and our immediate visceral need to show up and serve, how compelled we felt in that moment. And arriving at JFK is a moment I will never forget. As my colleagues have shared, Central Diner was buzzing with attorneys. There were many that I knew and more who were unknown to me at the time, but we all knew why we were there. And I felt community, I felt action and pride to stand with my fellow justice warriors. Over the next several weeks, hundreds of nonprofit and private bar attorneys were present at JFK at all hours. And I remember Camille, Maria, and myself working together to create service stations in Terminal 4, deploy volunteers to various other terminals, and create methods to try and track all of this work that we were doing. It was as though we were creating a nonprofit at an airport. That's how it felt. And the thing that I'll say and close with is that the reason that we were called there, the reason that we felt the need to jump to action was absolutely atrocious. But the energy of this band of attorneys, it was electric. You felt it in your bones. You felt it in your soul. This was more than an immigration legal services response. It was a racial justice movement. We were witnessing history, and we were on the right side of it.
Absolutely. I get goosebumps listening to you, Marianne, because I think it's that community that has sustained us over the past 4 years. And it's that fight, and that zeal that I think has allowed us to serve our communities the way we have, right? Being on defense for these past years. So with I think every process of, working through traumatic events, we have to go back and we have to, debrief on what's happened and what's been the impact. So I'm going to turn to you, Carmen, to walk us and start us on the conversation about the fallout, right? What has been the fallout? Coming out of this ban, and what happened to refugee processing? What's the status of litigation?
So everything is kind of up in the air still. We're waiting for a new executive order on refugee processing that's slated to come out on Friday, may come out on Monday. That should help to restart refugee processing. We won't get to the numbers that we got to during the Obama administration, but we have reason to believe that we'll probably have somewhere around 65,000 refugees entering the US, or at least spots that could be filled with refugees entering the United States in the next year, related to this executive order, which will make a massive sea change from what the Trump administration did to refugee processing. It wasn't only the Muslim ban, although the Muslim ban clearly had an oversized effect because Muslim communities, because of where the wars are at the moment, Muslim communities make up an outsized number of, or should make up an outsized number of the refugees entering the United States. The Muslim ban, I think, shocked us all into the realization of something that I think refugees have known for many years. It's very obvious when you're outside of the United States that you're being jerry-picked to enter or not enter. And I think for those of us that are in the US and are lucky enough to look at our immigration system from within, we often feel that the refugee system is somehow easier or more reasonable than immigration processes within the United States. Whereas for refugees outside, the process takes forever, and it's completely opaque. But it's obvious that something's happening and they're being chosen on some basis, and it's not fair, and it's not first come, first serve. And the Muslim ban, I think, was the first time that Americans really were confronted with the inherent racism of our immigration laws, especially as they affect individuals from outside of the United States. Needless to say, IRAP, where I work now, although I didn't at the time of the Muslim ban, has been advocating for increases in refugee numbers and for the elimination of some of the serious security checks that the Trump administration brought about in order to equate refugees and terrorists and prevent the entry of really vulnerable communities into the United States. And we sued a lot. We fought the first Muslim ban. We brought cases against the subsequent Muslim bans. We have a case still ongoing against the Africa ban, with varying rates of success. But I think it has meant a tremendous amount to the communities that we serve that we've continued to fight. And that's really, I think, the takeaway that we have both internally at IRAP and I think as an immigrant rights community, that there is inherent value in standing next to a community and helping them to fight against oppression, whether or not you're successful in the end.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to date myself here for a second because as you were talking, I was thinking about NCERS, the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System that was rolled out in 2002 after the attacks on September 11th. And, and if we draw a parallel, the powerful point you made at the end of your remarks, on how the community response can make such a big difference, and I think part of the struggle for those of us who were in practice at that time was the lack of community support and the fact that the racial justice movement was not stepping in, to call it out for what it was at a very sensitive time in our national security life. And it had a real human impact, a very detrimental, horrible impact, particularly on the Muslim community. So just want to go back in time a little more, but thank you for that. Marianne, you made a point also that was equally powerful about the convening of legal services providers, the trust that we had to build, immediately, right, overnight. I think any collaborative effort, anything that we do in coalition requires not just alignment in values and alignment in goals and objectives, but trust, right? So can you reflect and help us and walk us through, how the work the response to the Muslim ban, changed the legal services delivery, particularly in New York State and New York City, and any other reflections you want to share on that front? What has it done? What impact did it have?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a heavy question, and I think that anybody on this panel has their own perspective, and I'm sure so many people who have called in do as well. And I don't have to say to anybody that the last 4 years have been rife with managing multiple crises at once. The dismantling of the asylum system, the absolute horrors at the southern border, oppression of civil rights and the subjugation of due process, families ripped apart. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what we as advocates and providers have been combating. And JFK taught us a lot. But to me, the most important takeaway is that we as providers are strongest when we work together. We as advocates are impossible and unstoppable when we are connected and fighting together. Before IARC, providers felt this need to defend their territory, right? And no ban JFK, as well as surviving this past administration, has compelled us to unite and fight back on all fronts as a collective against the decimation of our immigration system, for fair funding and government contracts that actually meet existing community needs, sharing best practices across organizations in a variety of contexts, substantive, supervisory, and most importantly, throughout this pandemic, individual resilience. You know, these collaborative efforts have created an unbreakable network of support amongst us as providers, have created connectivity between the private bar and the public bar in a way that honestly is irreparable. It's impossible to replace. It's a perfect foundation that allows us to meet the actual needs of immigrant communities throughout New York State. And now more than ever, as we embark on this new era of hope for humane policies and practices relating to immigration at the federal level, we have to be able to rely on that network. I need to be able to call my friends on this panel and many others who are joining us today so that we can actually survive and represent effectively going forward. I need to pause and make sure that we're all aware that that doesn't mean that the fight is over, right? We have a bright light in front of us right now. I've gone through basically every emotion possible since January 20th, and comparing that to what I felt on 2 weeks before that, when the very heart of America was attacked from within. It's been a tumultuous time of emotion, and we have to continue to hold the government accountable. And if and when they don't, we need to take federal actions against them, because this is not the end. This is just the beginning. Garnering and effectively training and utilizing volunteer engagement is going to be such an essential component, particularly given what we've learned in the time of COVID and what we've gained in terms of experience over the course of the last 4 years. And so I call everybody to strengthen those connections, to rely on each other, because it's going to be a much harder fight going forward in order to effectively support immigrant communities beyond that emergency response. Now more than ever, I believe that IARC is going to serve as that platform for provider connectivity in that fight for access to justice for all.
I think we're all cheering, Marianne, and absolutely right. I think one thing I know I have learned in the past 4 years in particular is that strengthening capacity for legal services and to do the advocacy that we do requires a range of strategies and a range of partners and diverse partners. And I think the field has been nimble, has been creative, and has been generous in thinking, about what those strategies look like during an emergency response, but also in pulling together resources for the long haul, which is where we are. This work is not done. And in fact, I think one of the challenges that we will have going forward is keeping the momentum and keeping all those volunteers and partners engaged. So I'm looking at you, Jennifer, because pro bono has played such a big part in the range of responses over the past 4 years, particularly at JFK. How did pro bono show up at JFK, and how has pro bono shown up for immigrant communities since then?
Sure. So starting with the weekend, and I'm speaking to Cleary's experience because obviously that's what I know best, but it's no exaggeration to say that any number of firms showed up in the same way. And so while I'm using the Cleary numbers to put some teeth to it, it really was a collaborative effort on the law firm side, just as it was a collaborative effort, I think, on the legal services side. So in the 1 week from January 27th to February 3rd, more than 100 lawyers from my firm, Cleary Gottlieb alone, billed more than 1,000 hours. So that's 1 week, 1,000 hours, 100 people. And, we showed up by showing up. First of all, we got ourselves to JFK. But then speaking for Cleary, that first night, we filed 4 habeas petitions in the Eastern District. The sort of complexities of getting that done at a big firm like mine, where we're not known for filing petitions in the middle of the night, where there are new clients that we haven't met. it really had the backing at the highest levels of our firm to say we'll run the conflicts overnight, even if it means we stay up at night, we being the senior management. He's not on the call, I don't think, but Brendan Sear, who's our managing attorney, got in his car and drove to One Liberty Plaza to man Pacer to file the papers. And it was sort of everything from soup to nuts. So for us, when the dust settled, 3 of our 4 clients were released. And to give a sense of how chaotic it was, one of our clients was a green card holder, right, who never should have been detained to begin with, even under the ban, who had lived in Connecticut for many, many, many years. And what another one of our clients was a woman who was joining her US citizen fiance, and she was held 27 hours. And, when she came out, I said to her, through her fiance, who was the one we had been dealing with, did you eat or did you drink? And she said one of the guards, probably Customs and Border Patrol, bought me food. There was no food back there. There was no drinks back there. That place is not set up to hold airplanes full of people for 27 hours. It's just not. And then when the dust settled, we realized that one of the clients we had filed a petition for had been wrongfully sent back to Saudi Arabia. She was a Sudanese citizen. And we said, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because this is wrong. So we amended the petition and filed a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction to try to force the US government to bring her back. She has now finished her residency, but was a resident at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, and pretty active on social media. And we were able to sort of say, what is going on? She's doing a residency at the Cleveland Clinic. Like, how was she sent back? And she needs to come back. And so after a lot of late nights by a lot of lawyers at the firm, the government did in fact agree to allow her to return to the US. And then I think when the dust settled on that, there was, we helped another Iranian student actually who was being treated in the United States and lived in the United States, was receiving chemotherapy and had to get back, but had gone home to Iran for a quick visit with his relatives. There was a lot of that. And then there was a lot of, okay, what's next? Because as Hassan said, we had also been in communications with legal aid and other partners about the change in enforcement priority, where no one's a priority, so everyone's a priority. And how is that going to impact our clients and the broader immigrant community? And I think from a private bar pro bono perspective, the lawyers at the law firms started viewing immigration cases as civil rights cases. And that had not necessarily been the case before. Occasionally, yes, but a lot of times, no. A lot of times, I think people would see it as a women's issue because it was a gender violence case, or, a child issue because it was a SIDGE case. But for the first time, as to what Carmen said, people started saying, you know what? The policies themselves are reflecting racism and discrimination. And what can we at the private bar, which has a long history of doing these civil rights cases, what can and should we be doing about that? And that was really, I think, a pivot moment in the private bar.
And I think a big one and impactful in our overall ability to respond, not just to the Muslim ban, but going forward, right? To leverage the expertise of the immigration advocate community and you know, the immigrant advocate community and our knowledge of our clients, the needs, you know, the reasons why they travel, the need for protection, and the range of factors that someone in the private sector, you know, will not be privy to, but because of the nature of their work, I have found that the complement has allowed us to do a lot of work together, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm looking forward to exploring what other ways we can continue this work together in service to our immigrant communities. Thank you, Jennifer, and turning to you, Hassan, to talk about the enforcement landscape. How did the Muslim ban change the enforcement landscape? What has enforcement been like since then? And you know, maybe we can end the conversation with what we're looking at as far as enforcement under a Biden administration. I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's significant that Trump's executive orders about interior enforcement and border security came out, you know, just like 2 days before the Muslim ban was going into effect. And it really set a tone about how aggressive Stephen Miller was going to be to attack immigrants, and really the administration's commitment to hurting immigrants as aggressively and as insistently as possible. Right, the first Muslim ban was enjoined on March 3rd. Only 3 days later, they turned around and issued the second Muslim ban. That was enjoined just after less than 2 weeks. And then they came out with their third ban. That third ban, which was upheld by the Supreme Court in June of 2018, I think the Supreme Court's decision in that really emboldened the administration to say, we may have the backing of the Supreme Court to do extraordinarily damaging things. And that was the summer when the separated kids, you know, deliberate crisis was manufactured. And I think what they were doing with you know, the foreigners, with the Muslims, made it like safe to like rip children away from their parents. So I think what we saw in the very beginning of 2017 trickled down to the agencies very quickly, right? Right away, ICE stopped granting prosecutorial discretion in immigration court. We didn't get cases that had been closed anymore. We saw an uptick in raids by ICE in state courthouses. We saw indiscriminate raids out in the community. We saw denials from USCIS for even things like humanitarian forms of relief like VAWA, U's, and T's. And I think it all started with the Muslim ban and with this administration really coming out and saying, you know, it's not just about these little memos that we're putting out, which may be interpreted this way or that way, but like actual like damage on the ground, and how that really set a tone for folks within ICE and CIS, who I think, unfortunately, many of them were very receptive to that, and felt a tremendous sense of license from that. And then there's not even time to go through all the horrible things that happened, but I think the fact that the administration thought that they could rescind DACA, that they could issue the public charge regulation to create a wealth test to try to keep families apart, the healthcare proclamation that was tied to that, all of that sort of, I think, came out of this initial push to hurt people as visibly and as intensely and as unapologetically as possible.
Thank you. Right, you know, January of 2017, we had the first taste of how ugly it would be, but little did we know that it could translate into the horrors of family separation and all of the other actions that they took against immigrants. So thank you, Hassan. I think that, thinking ahead, what are the priorities for this group of advocates, right, in holding the federal government accountable, as Marianne pleaded, over the next 4 years? We're going to open it up to a Q&A in a minute, but I wonder if my fellow panelists have any closing thoughts before we open it up. Looking ahead, what's on your mind as a priority? monitor and ensure oversight.
Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and take the spot to tee us off. But it's funny. I actually just came out of leading a day-long convening for my team at IRAP about vision, and I think what I came out of that convening kind of feeling is this immense pride in being part of a community that stood up and bore the brunt of the repressive decisions of the prior administration. I think it became very clear to me over the last 4 years that we can no longer work in silos as we used to prior to the Trump administration, that we must litigate. I think immigration was, I feel like I'm gonna get a hand slap from the back of my head when I say this, but it was often the province of the wonk. I know that's what drew me to immigration. I loved that I got to learn about the world, and I got to meet people from all over the world. But it's like tax law. It was administrative in nature and just kind of really wonky, and you got to play with the statute. And suddenly it became really real that you also have to walk into federal court at a moment's notice and be very comfortable with it. It also, I think it has to be a priority for us to coordinate approaches to the government going forward. No more of this, like, some of us are friends and some of us sue them. We are all lawyers, we're all a defense bar. And as a defense bar, both private and public, we are here to defend the communities that we serve. So yeah, policy, like making sure that we have policy and litigation agendas in mind that are coordinated, which is where IARC is really helpful. I think are my priorities for my team. We'll see if they agree with me when I present them next week.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think I have shared with you and some of the folks on this call just my own personal experience having been in government, seeing that even an administration that has good intentions and for the most part is aligned with the community on policy with obvious differences, it was still challenging to make progress and to correct course to when we knew that impact was negative on the community, or where things were delayed, and purposely crawling through agencies and through the interagency. And as ombudsman, I remember, thinking, I have worked on this issue now for 3 years and we haven't been able to fix it. And I'm looking at you stakeholders, and what are you waiting for? That is what litigation is for. Obviously, as a public official, it's a little harder to drive that message, but there was a lot of winking and a lot of, I don't have the authority to order the agency to do that, but you have, the power to go take them to court and make a judge ask them to do that. So I am with you. I think I am thinking along the same lines as far as priorities from our team. We are not disbanding our litigation strategy team at all. I think we continue to think about priorities, and that should continue to be a tool in the toolbox. So I appreciate that point, Carmen. Along with robust engagement and and being at the forefront and trying to advance some of the policies that will come down, and being ready to address those as they're implemented. Any other thoughts? And I like to welcome the audience to write your questions in the chat, or just share your stories.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in as well. When I think about what I'm most excited about looking forward, is to center Black and Brown communities in our work, in how we engage our staff, and how we engage our communities, and how we message our work, and how we present what we do and who we are to funders and adjudicators. I think that the last 4 years, beginning with No Ban JFK, have really brought to the forefront how Black and Brown communities are marginalized and treated like meat, right? It's a pork and barrel game when it comes to these communities. And I'm most excited about how much awareness, how much humility, how much shameful reflection this world, this nation, this community is doing, right? I'm proud of my people of color and Black and brown brothers and sisters who are immigration attorneys, who are standing up for their rights within their organizations, within how we advocate for them, within how we speak about them, how we center them. The awareness there to me is something that I will say that is a positive from the last administration. I think that that is an issue that is in the forefront of everybody's mind, whether they like it or not. And so that is something that I am really excited about. Something that I'm going to keep my eyes on and pay attention to is really similar to what Carmen said, and that's holding this government accountable, right? I think that there's this element of we can breathe, we can relax, and that's good, but that doesn't mean that it's real, right? There's going to be a lot of moments coming forward where we need to take that next step. I will tell you that I do not regret over the course of the last 2 years having several of my attorneys admitted to the Southern District and to the Second Circuit. And I encourage and compel all of you to train your attorneys to do the same. It is time that we, as the immigration bar, become the federal bar. That is an essential component for our work forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Marianne.
can just,
Hassan or Jennifer?
yeah, just to tack on to that, I think, you know, I'm heartened that things, you know, that Biden has issued various executive orders already and trying to roll back things. But, you know, even if you roll back to pre-Trump, things were not great under Obama, right? We have like the amount of detention that was happening, the amount of deportations that were going on. We have to do much better than that. And so I think we're nowhere done. We're nowhere near being done with litigation to try to force things forward, and nowhere done, you know, with activism to try to get things to change. So, you know, and even like the comprehensive immigration reform bill that he put forward didn't include anything about, you know, changing the criminal stuff in the INA and changing the detention standards and all that kind of stuff. The New Way Forward Act does, and hopefully that together with his bill can both be passed. But I think there's still going to be a lot of work to be done.
So I think from the law firm side, we always take our direction in terms of where we should be going from our legal services partners. Where I personally would like to think about more is what's happening outside the cities. You know, the needs, which IARC has really been instrumental in opening my eyes personally to what's going on in the dairy farms upstate, what's going on in Suffolk County, what's going on in Westchester County, and how can we use maybe some of the lessons of remote work in COVID to get the private bar, you know, not all of which, but much of which, frankly, is based in Manhattan. How can we deploy those great resources outside of our little comfort zone, or what has historically been our little comfort zone, to broaden our sense of what our communities are? And so that's sort of a personal wish. How we do that, I think, is up to the other panelists to tell me and my law firm colleagues how we do that. But that's what I would like to see.
Sure. I think we have a lot of lessons, you know, coming out of not just COVID, but, you know, responses such as not just JFK, but the family separation response. And I'm excited to think about new strategies. And I know in our work in Mexico during the pandemic, we have deployed strategies that we weren't sure were going to work. And I think we have to remain nimble and be willing to retool and you know, and redeploy as we figure out what's best. And as we prepare to hopefully welcome the MPP families into communities that may or may not be underserved and that require resources for legal representation of folks who have been, you know, who have endured several years of hardship, danger, disease, and a number of other problems in Mexico. Camille, do you have anything for the group before? And I welcome everyone again. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat, or at least let us know in the chat that you want to chat. And I think Camille can unmute you.
Yes, and thank you, Maria. I wasn't going to speak on this panel, but since you asked, I I know anybody who's watching this and knows me is laughing that I could not keep quiet for a whole hour. I just want to say I'm looking so forward to the future for so many different reasons. I know that we have such a long road ahead. I know that we have such a fight that really we've just been stopping the bleeding for 4 years, and now we're rolling up our sleeves, and now we're going to get going. But when I think back on everything we've accomplished over the last 4 years, I mean, we showed up. I remember reading the New York Times headline and getting in my car that morning to go to JFK Airport, and my law professor's voice in the back of my head being like, Camille, you're not allowed to lawyer at the border. And no plan, no idea what we were going to do. And look at what we did. And I just want to say that I say this often, but I am the luckiest person in the world because I have the best job in the world. I go to work every single day with people who inspire me, who amaze me, who push me to do better. I mean, if you guys saw what these lawyers, what these legal advocates do day in and day out, how they pour their heart and their soul into every single case and how they just don't back down ever. I mean, how do you not keep going? How do you not get energized by that? So I don't know. I'm just looking forward to all of it, but most of it, I'm looking forward to being in the trenches with all these people for another 4 years and beyond, because I know that we're not going to stop until it keeps going. And everything that they've said on this panel, I'm just really excited. I just feel like I just got to spend an awesome hour of my evening with like the best people on this planet. So, and that includes all of you guys who are attending and who joined us tonight and who are celebrating this moment with us. It's a pivot in our history, and I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be.
I think that's a wonderful way to start wrapping up here. I don't know that I can top that reflection, Camille. Thank you for the passion and the care and the thought that you put into everything that you do for IARC and for all of us and for our community. I am looking forward to seeing this community continue to thrive and get stronger and continue to deliver the very best for the people we serve. So I too am looking forward to the next few years, and I hope that we can do this in person at some point soon. And we keep reminding ourselves and each other to take care of ourselves and focus on our wellness and our resilience, because the road ahead requires us to be healthy and strong. So unless there are any other thoughts for the group, should we end, Camille?
It end and begin at the same time, but thank you everyone. Have a great evening, and we will be posting the recording of this webcast on our website, and you can sign up for a mailing list. We're going to be doing these events monthly. We've got some really fun ones and interesting ones coming up on how journalists cover immigration and issues in the newsrooms and how that translates to immigration. We're going to be talking about law school recruitment. We're going to be doing one on immigration and sports in April around opening day of baseball, because what's more American than baseball? And just a lot of other fun stuff coming down the pike. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.